when I was taking classes with Lee, I did a directed study on environmental theology, and one of the books that he picked for me was environmental eco-theology, or evangelical eco-theology, which blew my mind that evangelicals were talking about it already. They didn't use permaculture as their frame of reference, but they did use the Bible in a very similar way that I do. And we also read, or I also read Laudato Si by Pope Francis, which calls for the care of our common home. And so it was very heartening to know that in Christian circles that was being talked about 10 years ago, but it still isn't as broad as it should be. If every Southern Baptist congregation in America suddenly started talking about this in a way that said the planet is good and should be protected, and that we should love our neighbors and show that love, and show that we're following the golden rule by protecting the planet, then that would be a sea change, I think, because it's typically the conservative people on the fundamentalist slash evangelical end of the spectrum that tend to vote in ways and for policies that are harmful for the environment. And if you look at the Project 2025 document, which I have read much more than I would prefer, I wish it didn't exist, but there is so much in there that is ostensibly, they couch a lot of things in faith-based language, but it's so destructive to the environment as a whole, to the biosphere, and it's pro-extractive industry and pro-capitalism, but it's also pro-harm your neighbor in other ways, in sort of social, culture war ways. And again, if we're looking at the golden rule, I don't think the culture war exists. If we're looking at the love of neighbor, I don't think that the culture war exists. And if we're looking at through that lens as our theological rubric, or as what Greg Carey called the canon within the canon, then we don't look at the planet as something that's, or its people and other species as things that are expendable. We see them as creations of God, and we see them as people, places, and other living beings that deserve to have a reasonable quality of life as they continue to be alive.
Well, thank you, Dillon. Any final words of wisdom?
I would love to hear from students who've read the book and have their thoughts. And I would love to see more eco-theology taught in seminary settings, so that when the next generations of theologians and pastors and lay leaders and spiritual directors, all the kinds of people that come to seminaries or Bible schools would already be equipped to be talking about these things in this way.
Would you like to say anything about your podcasts?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So after I wrote Go Golden, I wrote a couple of other books, Theological Musings, Volumes 1 and 2, Collected Essays of a Tattooed Theologian. And that inexplicably landed me on SiriusXM on a weekly spot with John Fugelsang, a comedian and political commentator whose parents were both Catholic, a priest and a nun, who left their vocations, got married, and had a family. And we talk about the culture wars and Christian nationalism and theology, and sometimes permaculture.